No tengo la menor duda de que La Arquitecta es la mejor serie del 2023 y hablé con su directora con respecto a cuáles fueron las influencias que tuvieron y cómo fue que se construyó este relato tan crudo y tan realista que tranquilamente podría transcurrir de aquí a un par de meses. Fíjate lo que es esta serie imperdible hecha en Oslo.
We now return to Mira Akien and Contré with our latest interview.
I think we wanted to give people a chance to look into the future and or how the future could look like if we make the wrong decisions in the present.
Jeg interessert I et boliglån. Det bare det.
Julie Alm, 29 år.
It's developed together with Nora, Elisabeth Landsbrød and Christian Kilde. And they came up with the idea. And it happened because Nora was looking for a place to live at the time. And it turned out that the only thing she could afford was to rent a parking lot space. And that's kind of how they started thinking about it. And we thought, okay, what would happen if people would actually live in parking lots?
Ah,
and
wow.
then it kind of escalated from there.
Did she actually live there?
No, she didn't. She didn't live there. She ended up finding something else. But yeah, it was very difficult to find a place to live.
Her har stått tomt her siden bilene forsvant fra byen.
Jeg tror kanskje ikke dette noe for meg.
Hvis du ombestemmer deg, så leie på 23 000.
Tell me all the looks of the show, production design and cinematography, because it's like, I would say minimalistic in a way, like, but how would you define it and how did you come with the concept of how the show should look?
Yes, we actually started collaborating with Signe Krab-Nyman, our production designer, at very early stages of the development. Because it's a very low budget show, we didn't have a lot of money to shoot it. So we had to think creatively to find solutions very early on and incorporate that in our script. So that's how it started. And then we thought about how can we make a universe that's very cold and hostile and kind of surround our main character, Julie, with, concrete and glass and metal and cold colors to kind of emphasize our points in the show. And then we had a very good collaboration with David Bauer, the photographer, who was also very much part of the creating the universe. And the camera style is kind of inspired by The Office or Succession and shows like that. And I think it gives a great tempo and it has a lot of humor. It's like the camera has its own kind of character commenting on the characters on screen and creating even more awkward moments. So yeah, it was really fun to work that way. It was the first time I've worked with a zoom lens in this way, and it was really exciting.
It's not like too far away in the future, but it's like futuristic. So why was the future like an option for you?
I think the future is great for exaggerating things. So we could take tendencies that we already see in today's society and we can kind of enhance them, make them bigger in order to point at them and maybe confront those issues that we already see today.
Hvordan fikk dere råd til å kjøpe?
Jeg fikk en stor erstatning.
Det skal jo ikke være sånn at folk må bli knivstukket for å ha råd til å kjøpe leilighet I sentrum.
Tell me about the tone of the show. I mentioned cynicism, cruelty, apathy, like elements that define the whole environment, but you balance them with humor. So how did you work with those for this show?
Yeah, I think the characters in the show are very much a product of the society they live in. And that's also where the humor comes from. So by putting the characters in these absurd situations, forcing them to cope in very difficult situations, I kind of think that it creates humor in it. I think it's part of the DNA in the show to have the humor there. It's also, I really love to work with humor. So for me, it was, and for the script writers, when they wrote the first pilot and I read that, I was like, okay, this is the tone and the tempo and the humor. It's very much why I love the story.
Sivilstatus, singel, barn, 0, formue, 0. Du kvalifiserer fortsatt ikke til noen av våre boliglån.
We did a lot of research, both in terms of like the architecture industry and in terms of the housing market. And we discovered that, things are really only going in one direction. And I think the inequality will keep growing if we don't change things, but I'm worried that the people who have the power to change things are quite comfortable and quite rich, and they like the thought of getting even richer. So I think we have a feeling that the gap between the people who are not in the housing market, doesn't own a place, they will be left behind, and the people who own houses will only get richer, and will have a big gap in society. And I think it's happening all around the world, and I think it's a really big problem, and it's very sad that the people with the power to change that are not addressing it at all.
Hvordan kan vi bygge 1000 nye boliger i Oslo sentrum? Den som vinner får en bonus på 800.000 kroner.
One of the best part is that a lot of the people in the architecture world, a lot of architects are watching it, and when I'm at festivals, there are always architects at the screenings coming to me and talking about it. And we've had screenings at an architecture festival where we can create a conversation about how to build and how to maybe make a bit of change in how we think about the housing market.
Jeg har tenkt mye på at folk ikke lenger har råd til å kjøpe leilighet i byen. Jeg prøver bare å hjelpe. Hvem det egentlig du hjelper?
Again, you can see a very big difference between the rich and the poor, whereas as the rich person, you see this bench as art, which it is, but it shouldn't be hostile architecture, which is like the term for this kind of architecture, which is especially happening a lot in the big cities. And I think it's a sad way to create art. And also, if you look at the art in Nina and Marcus's apartment, they have paintings, but it's not paintings that they like looking at, but it's expensive paintings that they have to create a status and to be correct in terms of how society looks at them. And you can also see it in the way Julie dresses. She's not dressing comfortably as how she wants to dress, but she's dressed as she thinks she should dress being an architect.